And now we will move to the two countries that are not interested in joining the Eurasian Economic Union. We will begin with Uzbekistan, and for presenting the Uzbek case, we have one of our Central Asian fellows here at GW, Farrukh Irnazarov, who is also, and maybe it's even more important, country director of the Central Asia Development Institute, which is a regional think tank based in Tashkent, really following a lot of economic issues in the region.
Thank you, Marlene. Yeah, initially I was placed first, but then Marlene decided to reshuffle and restructure and put two non-cooperative countries together, and then basically to have a bigger effect, I think, because after me, Nazik is coming with Turkmenistan, and I think it's going to be a bomb. So basically, while you are in the process of digesting your lunch, I'll try to help you to process why actually Uzbekistan is not joining or is not willing to join EU, and what are the driving factors. We heard bits and pieces from previous presentations that Uzbekistan is not part, doesn't want to be a part of that, and also there was a question about in the upcoming 5 years. Yeah, as it stands now, it doesn't look so, but you know, in the world of Central Asia, even though it doesn't look as dynamic as it is, things change rapidly sometimes. But I'll go with my analysis, and my analysis is based on 3 major factors of non-integration, and I think I can use this word here because Martha Wilcott is no longer here. She hates this word integration, she said, and so I have to be, now I have a certain sense of freedom and I can use this word. So basically, the first layer is the government, basically the reluctance of government to be part of this any integration process. So Uzbekistan has been heavily criticized through the years for non-cooperation, especially when it comes to economic, less extent political issues. But Uzbekistan was quite active when it came to security issues. So in terms of promoting security agenda, non-terrorist activities and things like that. So that was always high on the agenda of Uzbekistan. But then in the 90s, people thought that all Central Asian countries are building up their national identities, and that's why after some time they will all realize that they need each other and will come together. And as we see it in 2015, it doesn't really happen. Now we can see that most of these countries are actually drifting apart and then to different directions. So back to the analysis, it's the government, the first layer. The second layer is ordinary people, and the third is companies. So basically, what companies think about prospects of joining EU, or whether they do anything to actually accelerate this kind of to promote EU agenda within the country. First, we have to start with the most important, massive aspect is the government. We always have to keep in mind, and sometimes we tend to forget, that for Uzbekistan, the major issue is the issue of security. So all economics and other issues, they come second. They are important, but not as important as security. So Uzbekistan, the government of Uzbekistan has been trying to build up the security aspect for many years, and now to give even a fraction of that to some supranational body in any possible sense, it would be kind of really weird thing to do. So basically, the government worked so much to achieve that, to emulate that, and then to any integration group or to any integration organization would be a very interesting shift. So also the government views that there are also, of course, some economic aspects of that, the biggest issue of non-convertibility of the national currency. Just to give you an idea, for those of you who are not aware of that, so even if you can do a business in Uzbekistan, but once you earn your money in national currency, you cannot convert it back to major currencies like US dollar, euro, pounds, or whatever. And this is a major problem. And of course, if Uzbekistan wants to be a part of EU, that definitely should be addressed, and but it's not on the agenda as it stands. Also, another issue about the borders, it's again boils down to security. They are not as transparent as it was claimed in Kyrgyzstan, I think. So the idea is that, first of all, economy is not really ready to be part of EU, but at the same time, economy has never been designed to be part of the EU. So it has never been on the agenda of the Uzbek government to basically look for common denominators with the neighbors and to come up with some plan to integrate. The government numerously emphasized in the past that Uzbekistan doesn't want to be part of any integration organizations, especially the ones which resembles the former Soviet Union. So that's why that was the very reason of non-cooperation. At the same time, we of course all understand that geopolitical position of Uzbekistan actually so important in terms of when you talk about Eurasian integration to have it on board. But Uzbekistan stays firm, putting the terrorist agenda, internal domestic issues with religious extremism, and at the same time proximity to Afghanistan as the very important aspect. So Uzbekistan, in this regard, adheres to bilateral rather than multilateral agreements. So if we look at pattern of relationship with the neighboring of Kazakhstan, for example, it has been improving lately, and they've been signed agreement on eternal friendship. Yeah, on eternal friendship, and then also so on bilateral level with all those countries, or with most of those countries, I should exclude, I think, unfortunately, Tajikistan from that. Uzbekistan has been trying to develop kind of good relationships, and on a bilateral level, usually it works quite fine. And but when it comes to multilateral, then Uzbekistan is very cautious, and the government doesn't want to. First, they want to discuss everything. But as it stands now, the government takes a wait-and-see position. If, for example, tomorrow we see Vietnam or Egypt being part of that, maybe Uzbekistan will try. Maybe some shift will happen in the mentality, and then they will reconsider that, because in December 2014, when President Putin came to Tashkent, there was a common communique when then basically they said that we will start negotiations between the EU and in Uzbekistan on achieving free trade agreement, and then some experts were quite fast on jumping on this and saying, oh, okay, Uzbekistan is shifting its policy yet again. But this was not the case, because on January 12th, President Karimov explicitly said, when addressed Oliy Majlis, explicitly said that we are not planning to be part of any organization which resembles former Soviet Union, and also, although he did not explicitly mention EU, but it was so obvious that EU definitely was not high on the agenda. It was mostly like, okay, we can have consultations, but we can have consultations forever. Also, so this is more or less with regard to the government. If we go to people, it's a completely different story. Ordinary people, they, in most cases, they know nothing about the EU. It's not in the, it's not on TV. It's not discussed about pros and cons or something like that. What people actually interested in, they heard from here and there that basically, if they become part, if Uzbekistan becomes part of the EEU, then the price of cars will go down, and you know Uzbeks are really crazy about cars, and so for them it's a kind of very important aspect, and saying, okay, maybe then we should join it. You know, we should join it because all the cars, because as it stands now, the tariffs for automobiles for foreign Uzbekistan produces its own automobiles, but at the same time, so if you want to bring import automobile, then basically a car, it will cost you 120% of its original price. And so basically in Uzbekistan you have mostly local cars for that very reason. And so this is kind of kitchen conversations do occur, and when it comes to experts, then I would say that most of them actually quite skeptical about joining the EU. They claim that Uzbekistan is self-sufficient and doesn't really need to be part of this kind of organization. But really, like also we have to keep in mind that Uzbekistan completely under Russian media space, and watching Russian TV, and then they hear about the EU and things like that, and this is where they have their arguments, and this is the departing point for most people when they discuss any prospects of EU. So it's completely shaped by the Russian media. And now I'm coming to the last but very important aspect. It's so-called, let's expect this kind of bottom-up approach that companies may instigate some kind of change in this regard. And we have to distinguish between companies, large companies, and we have to distinguish between SME. And of course, large companies, they're already represented in neighboring countries. Of course, they would love to see it's more harmonized, and it would be much easier for them to operate within those countries. And many of them even say, "Oh, okay, we would open our headquarters in Tashkent if this is ever going to happen, because for strategic reasons, it's a nice place to be based." Also, but for small and medium enterprises, they are not that much interested in that, and because they simply, first of all, they realize that the internal domestic market, first of all, is not satiated, and at the same time, they see they actually have no idea of the neighboring market of Kazakhstan. There is we did research on actually with Alexander Liebman on cross-border trade between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and we just realized that there is a huge information vacuum. Even though initially you would expect that this former Soviet background, like lingua franca Russian and everything, should help out to get information about the neighboring market, this was not the case. So many companies were complaining that they don't know anything about environment in the neighboring countries, but at the same time when we asked them, "Are you interested to obtain this kind of information?" they say, "Yeah, why not? But maybe not. Maybe Russia is more interesting, or maybe business in Turkey, Korea, Dubai, and things like that." And they know a lot about these markets, but about neighboring markets, not so much. And it was the same case, by the way, in Kazakhstan. In Kazakhstan, there was a case. So they're poor anyway. So what's the point? So we are not interested really in going there and expand our business. So these are the issues for especially for small and medium enterprises. But for larger companies, they anyway go and discuss their problems and issues with the governments, and they solve their issues with the government. So basically, for them, it's nice to have it, but they will not unite their efforts and the resources and investment to achieve that at least in the mid run. And basically, I also went to, especially when President Karimov said that we are not interested to be part of any integration organization resembling Soviet Union. I went to see how did Russian people, internet people, reacted to that news. And this reaction was very interesting. It was very negative towards Uzbekistan, even racist, I would say. But when I got to the Kazakh reaction on Kazakh websites, to that especially Tengri News, and that was a mix of all the ideas. So some of them were claiming, so we are not interested about it's fine, we can do it without Uzbekistan. Some of them were saying, oh, anyway, we need to have Uzbekistan. Others, oh, I went to Uzbekistan and I see they're self-sufficient in manufacturing and things like that, and basically they don't need us. And so all these kind of opinions they do float, and it's hard to say which one prevails. So, but in general, the situation is that, as you can see, that all three layers, they are not really pushing towards this agenda. But of course, we can also argue that they are not pushing for this agenda because this agenda is not really embedded there in the domestic market. So people are not discussing that. People just thinking of looking for some opportunities within the region. So having said that, I would like to finish my speech and.